Okay, it's 6:30, so I'm going to start with our usual questions and answers. And I realize there are only three of us, but, oh, well, there are now four of us. But if anyone has a question, I have an answer, and it might even be a correct one. So, anyone have a question? Nobody has a question?
Are you going to go over the new Siri 2.0?
Yes, in fact, I said I was going to do spaces and talk about Siri and Apple Intelligence, and I lied. I'm going to talk about Siri and Apple Intelligence and not going to talk about spaces at all. Oh, shut up. Um, I have a concussion and been feeling somewhat under ambitious, so I'll put off spaces for another time. So yes, I will be talking quite a bit about that, even though I might have to. Siri, stop.
Will that get better in the next version of the OS?
No, and
No?
it's partially it's my own fault because I set it up so that I don't have the word "hey" first. I just have it respond to its name, and normally that's perfectly okay because I'm the only one here. But during SMUG meetings, it gets entertaining sometimes. Once I did it was a joke. I have an Alexa Echo Dot, and I also have a Google Home, and I pasted together a bunch of recordings. They weren't done all together, but I pasted it together so it sounded like they were arguing amongst themselves, and I posted it on my user group site on the East Coast, and I had people from Apple, people from Amazon, and people from Google all ask, how did I get them to argue with each other? And I just recorded something and then I pasted them together. So it wasn't as if they were really arguing, but they were all quite intrigued as to how I managed to get them to argue, because it did sound like they were arguing with each other. But I wrote out a script in order to make it sound that way. So I do have fun with them unless they speak up when I'm not intending them to.
Mhm.
Anyone have any questions?
I do. I have a question about shared albums.
Yes.
In iMovie, you can make a magic movie, which entails you just feeding it a bunch of clips. It'll add transitions and all that sort of thing, but it will make the clips. It'll shorten them to whatever, truncate them or leave them be and so on. Well, I've noticed that in sharing an album, if you have video clips, it works the same way. It'll shorten some of them. And is there some way to disallow that, or in iMovie, of course, the shortened clip can be lengthened, but I don't see any way to do that in the shared album business.
Okay. I do a great many videos. I do them for SMUG. I do them for my church. For the church, I've done something like 400 since I moved here in 2018. So I do a lot of video. For things other than straight video, like for example, the Strait Macintosh user group video, I record this using Zoom. I bring it into iMovie, and then I trim out the parts that I don't want, such as the part at the start of the meeting where I'm sitting there trying to get the controls to work and so on and so forth. So I use iMovie for that because it's just one pure piece of video, and I chop out things like when I had a power failure, chop out that part, things like that. For other things that I do, I don't use iMovie. So for example, to assemble a whole bunch of smaller clips, you might recall that I had a short video of a bunch of emojis talking about artificial intelligence. I did that in Keynote. I recorded the movie clips independently. Then I fired up Keynote and put them in the order I wanted. And I set up the transitions within Keynote, and then I exported it as a video. And the reason why I did that is that there are other more powerful tools such as Final Cut Pro, which is a real bear to learn. And there are many other ways of doing it. But the nice thing about Keynote basically says, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. You feed it, you paste in a video that's the length that you want, and it just saves them in order. So that's how I tend to do some of the more complicated things that I've done. There are other ways of doing it, but Keynote, because within that one slide, if that slide is a 13-minute video, it'll be 13 minutes long. And if you don't want it to be 13 minutes long, you trim it and then dump it into Keynote. You're not waiting for the program, be it iMovie or Final Cut or whatever, to dynamically make changes on the fly as it's rendering it. Keynote just saves it as a video. So, and it also allows me to do things that are a little bit complicated. Like, for example, in iMovie, you can put on titles, but the titles come in a set format, and they're down at the bottom, or they're up at the top, or they fly in all over. With Keynote, I can make the title anything I want to, because it's just a slide, and I can use any font I want to. I'm not subject to the constraints of how iMovie does it. So my technique, and it's weird, I know, is just to use Keynote, and I lay out longer videos that are done in pieces in Keynote. And then after it's all done the way I want it to, then I go to the file menu and I say export, say that I want it as a movie, and it renders out the movie. Again, it's easier to use than Final Cut. It gives me options that I don't have in iMovie itself. So that's how I do things like that.
How does it paste the clips together?
Well, if you recall the movie with a bunch of emojis, I just had a slide pasted in one movie, another slide pasted in another movie. I don't like the order. I just rearrange the slides, and it rearranges the movies because there's one clip per slide.
But will it make it one single movie, or
Yeah.
does it?
Yeah.
It does. It combines all the slides together?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is powerful.
I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it's what I use because I'm really lazy. You can do much the same in iMovie, but what I will do in iMovie, because it doesn't have as much control over things like titles, at the start of the SMUG postings that I put up on YouTube, I have a slide that I made in Keynote. I save that as an image, and then in iMovie, I just import that image and I stick that at the front of the video. So that's why I don't have a standard iMovie title and an iMovie end credit. It's that custom SMUG logo. But that's because I didn't do it in iMovie. I did it in Keynote. Keynote, I use it for a lot of things other than what it was designed.
Well, can you do that with like photos that have been videoed in the photo app? I mean, is that what Steve was talking about?
Well, within Photos, you can create a video, those custom videos. Just export it as a video, and then you can suck it into iMovie, and you can modify it the way you want and stick a title on the front of it, or you can take a whole bunch of smaller videos and put them all together. I do that all the time in iMovie as well. But a lot of the stuff that I do to control things, I use I use Keynote. I use Keynote because I don't know if you've ever used PowerPoint, but PowerPoint is one of the most horribly designed things on the planet. When Microsoft bought it, Microsoft did not develop PowerPoint. It was an outliner. It would just do text outlines, and so you could add things in and you could indent things because it was a text outliner. And Microsoft decided that they were going to do something else with it because a company that doesn't exist anymore, and I can't remember the name of it. Adobe bought it, and I can't remember the name of the company. Anyway, they had a slide presentation piece, a package, and Microsoft thought they had to compete with that, so they went and took what was a really nice outlining product and turned it into PowerPoint. But PowerPoint does all kinds of just incredibly stupid things. And Keynote has a much cleaner design. It's, if you put something someplace, it stays there. It doesn't wander all over. It doesn't change fonts. It doesn't change punctuations just because it's Tuesday. It does what you want it to.
And I like Keynote because it does latex, and you can have like equations or symbols and everything in latex, and PowerPoint, you can't do that. You have to kind of take a picture of it and then plop it in as a pic.
Yes, and by the way, when he says latex, he's not talking about latex gloves. Latex is a programming language for doing equations and laying it out typographically.
Well, special symbols, Greek letters.
Well, it was originally designed for math formulas, but
Right.
yeah, it's a very powerful tool, and it's got a very simple interface. But the reason I really like Keynote is it's consistent, and I cannot get that kind of consistency with PowerPoint. PowerPoint just does all kinds of stupid things. The two pieces of Microsoft software that I use all the time that I really like are Microsoft Word, which I've been using since 1984, and Excel. And Excel is what's one of those things that people don't really understand. Excel is a Mac program. It was developed on the Mac for the Mac. It was made by Microsoft, and it was much later introduced into Windows. But you can do amazing things with Excel, but you can do amazing things with Word as well.
I don't think I can live my life without Excel. My whole life is organized by Excel. And Microsoft Works is an oxymoron anyway, except for those two programs. I agree. Can I ask you a question? Does anybody else have problems with their iPhone 17 not ringing? And not only not ringing and you're missing calls, but it doesn't even show that somebody calls. And so they're texting you going, I'm trying to call you, but it's going to voicemail. So I've had this problem now for about 2.5 weeks. I've been to, I've done everything. I've looked it up and it's like, oh, you're one of a million people that has the same problem. Do these 12 things. So I went over to T-Mobile. They changed the eSIM. They did all kinds of stuff, restarted it several times. Is anyone else having that problem?
The answer to that is a lot of people, it will not ring because they accidentally mute it. There are all kinds of, well, I'm just saying there are all kinds of different ways to mute it. You can mute it using the side button, which a lot of people may have accidentally done. You can mute it doing a bunch of other things. I, for the most part, prefer to not have it ring. But the other thing that, starting with the iPhone 17 and the latest version of the operating system that people sometimes are not aware of, you have to be very careful about how you screen calls. It's got a new call screening feature.
Right.
And you have to be really careful about what you screen. As an example, you don't necessarily want to screen all, you don't want to ignore all unknown numbers, because if you have a doctor's appointment and the doctor sends you a reminder, that reminder is probably not going to come from a number that's in your address book. And if you screen out everything that's not in your address book, it won't ring. And then later on, you'll wonder why. So there are a number of different ways in which your phone can be operating perfectly well, and you can still manage to miss calls depending upon
Right.
how you set up screening and whether or not you accidentally mute it. You can mute it using the side buttons. You can mute it by using the control center. What is it? Yeah, I think it's called control center. Um,
Focus is another thing. Yeah, I've been through all those things and I've become really aware of all those different things. So just yesterday, I found on Apple Community where people were talking about this problem. And then they gave a list of the 12 or 15 things to try, which I had already tried all of them. And then the last one was to restart it, but not just restart it the normal way, which is I just press the thing and then it says slide to restart and I slide it. This was very specifically, you have to do it exactly this way. You have the up down buttons, you press the up once quickly, you press the down quickly, and then you hold the side button until until the apple appears. You don't slide it off. And I did that. I had to really pay attention to how it said it. And after I did that, I started getting calls and they started showing. But it was a specific way of restarting that's different from any other way that I've ever restarted.
I
yeah,
think you'll find that that's a reset.
that's a
That's
reset.
what I was thinking that it was, yeah. But it wasn't like reset to factory standards because all my
Right.
stuff was still there. It was some special reset. And so apparently that's what it needed.
Yeah, I have heard of people having problems, but it's difficult with so many people try to have their phone limited, and the reason why people try to have the phone limit calls is that throughout the history of the phone in general, when people first started having phones in their homes, people complained that they got calls all the time, even if it was only one or two a week. Well, now you can have a call all the time, and since it's literally with you all the time, it
Yeah.
can be really, really annoying. So people have figured out different ways to have it screen it, or just not have the ringer go off, or all kinds of things. So it's become a problem. And when a lot of people say that it's not ringing, it's not necessarily because of a problem with the phone. It's because there are just a myriad of different ways of telling it to shut up. And whether you expect it to or not, you happen to hit on a way that's a bit overly quiet. But yeah, the reset is an option. I would caution you though that if you need to reset it more than like once every 6 months, there might be something wrong with the machine,
Yeah.
because that's the that's an extreme way of solving the problem. Normally, you need to reset your phone, turn it off, turn it back on again. I mean, power it completely down, wait a few minutes, power it completely back up, and that's more than enough.
Well, that was happening to me too. I have an iPhone 15 Pro Max, and and on certain calls it wasn't ringing. And then I realized I had the setting for screening so that if it's not in my address book, it won't ring.
Oh, yeah.
But then I found that I took it off and all the calls kept coming in, but it was so annoying. I was getting so many spam calls that I put it back on and just check to see, the missed calls list every so often to make sure I didn't miss one that I really wanted. And it turns out I've been doing this for like a couple of months now. I'm getting less and less spam calls.
That's
When it's like almost down to zero.
um,
Is
I
it on-
have I have a I have a slightly different problem than the rest of you. Actually, I shouldn't say that because I don't know where you guys are from. I moved here from from Maryland, and my phone number has a Maryland prefix. Because it has a Maryland prefix, and because every single lobbying lawyer and lobbying firm on the planet is in Washington, D.C., or Baltimore, or somewhere in that area, I get tens of thousands of calls a year from them asking me to donate money, vote for this candidate, vote against that candidate, save the whales. Doesn't make any difference what it is. all kinds of lobbying. So I set up call screening, and this call screening now will make my phone vibrate. And since it's in my pocket, I feel it. And I look at it, and if it's from 240 or 301 or 703 or 202 or any of the Baltimore, Washington phone numbers, I don't answer it. Could it be the president calling me? Possibly. Could it be someone telling me that they're withholding my Social Security? Yes, they found out I'm actually only 12. Might be. I don't care. If it's from that area, I don't want to hear them because I've lived here for 8 years now. I don't really need to hear them anymore. So that's my way of screening is also visual. If I get a phone call, I'll look at it. And if it's from the DC area, I just don't answer. I'm not recommending that you necessarily do that. But you know, there are different, you have to deal with telecommunications in your own way. It is a problem. By the way, the FCC was within 60 days of implementing a rule that required the phone companies not to pass through a call unless it was from a valid number. A lot of these spammers, they use invalid numbers. You'll see that the call says it's from South Dakota. Why? Because there's a line in South Dakota that's not being used, so they say it's from that phone number. They were within 60 days of making that a rule because the phone companies have the technology to do this right now, so that somebody places a call, they place a text message to you, the phone company can instantly check to see if it's from a valid phone number. They were within 60 days of doing that, and the current administration vacated the rule. So there was relief. There was a technological solution that had nothing to do with your phone, and they cut it off. But the technology is there, and in most countries they don't allow companies to do what they do in the United States. Such is life. Any other questions now that you've heard my rant against spam phone calls?
Well, I'm having, so I have an iPhone 17, and then I've got my Mac Mini, which is great. And then I have an iPad Air. They're all relatively new. For some reason, my iPad Air does not get the emails, even though when I go to the iCloud, everything appears to be okay. But I cannot, and I also cannot check emails on my phone. And I don't understand why. And I just used to be able to figure this out in the 80s with Apple, but now it's beyond me. I just can't figure it out.
But my first question is, what company do you have an iCloud account, or do you have an AOL account, or?
I have iCloud, but I've got OliPen for internet, I've got for my email, and I've got T-Mobile for my phone.
Okay, the OliPen is for your internet, but do you have an email account with OliPen?
Yes.
Okay, this has nothing against OliPen as a company, because I'm actually quite impressed with them. But OliPen as an email address is not a really great idea, and the reason is that they are a local company, which means that if internet access for any reason is cut off from the peninsula, you don't get anything.
That's right.
Apple and Gmail and Microsoft are all global. In fact, on the space station, they use iCloud for email on the space station, which isn't even on this planet. But OliPen has a limitation because of that. Other ones that I'm not terribly happy with people using in this day and age are AOL. AOL dates back to the days, well, AOL took over email accounts from CompuServe in the 1990s. And they got really big, and then they got sold, and then got sold again, and they got sold again. And eventually they were acquired by Verizon. Verizon just wanted their customer lists, and then they sold it to, right now it's owned by an Italian holding company. They're spending no money at all on the infrastructure to AOL. So AOL is just not a good choice. Yahoo's not a good choice. You basically want to, for email and things where you really do want to get your mail, you want to stick with iCloud, you want to stick with Microsoft, you want to stick with Google. And among other things, they are global presences. So you can be in Spain, you can be in Forks, and you can get email, assuming that you have internet access. With OliPen, it's a little bit rockier. But in terms of why they're not showing up on your phone and your
And I think I know why. I had figured it out and I forgot that one of them is an IMAP, IMAP, and another one is put in as a POP3. And in the addresses in the email accounts, and nobody can figure out how to change it.
well, that's another reason why I recommend Google or Microsoft or Apple, because they're all IMAP.
So when you say Google, are you talking about Gmail?
Gmail, yes.
Okay, okay. And when you say iCloud, because I have an iCloud account,
Yeah.
and then when you say Microsoft, what is that? Outlook?
Yes, Outlook.
Okay, okay, okay. Thank you.
Other questions? I do not. Hey, any other questions?
Does anybody have Starlink? No?
Yeah, Starlink is, I know some people who have Starlink that really like it, but there are people who aren't anywhere near Squim or Port Angeles. They're out on the side of a mountainside someplace or something like that. The good news, bad news with Starlink is that it's not a uniform service. And the other thing is that it's really good at things being broadcast to you. It's not so great about things where you're doing things interactively. And part of that is because it's a satellite service and the satellite has very little power. It just doesn't have a lot of bandwidth. If you think about it, when Comcast and a bunch of other people got into the internet business, they're very good at delivering things to you. Like wave cable, the download speed that you can get from wave cable around here, you can get a gigabyte a second, which is really, really fast. But the upload going the other direction is just a tiny fraction of that. Why? It's because they're a cable television concern. They send identical content out to lots of people, but email is not identical. Any email you send off is a one-on-one, and they just don't have the upload bandwidth going the other direction. Starlink has the same problem. That unique content going out the other way tends to be quite slow and less reliable. And there's no easy fix for that. Dish, for example, a lot of people have Dish. Dish can send you a TV signal, but when you send something back, it actually goes over phone lines. So that's even slower. It's just it's a combination of physics and what you can do with telecommunications.
Would you recommend an internet provider on the peninsula? I mean, like I said, I have OliPen just for the internet, but who would you recommend?
If you look at a topographical map of Clallam County, I will tell you that that's why I can't recommend anything. When you're in Seattle, Seattle might be very lumpy, but Seattle has over 1 million people. And so they have an extensive infrastructure, telecommunications infrastructure. We don't. If you think about how people get here, people come here via 101. Is there an alternative to 101? Nope. And our telecommunications are the same way. There's very limited access in, and there's very limited access going the other way. And when it comes to a telecommunications provider, if you're in downtown Sequim, Olepen does a really good job. But Olepen's completely unavailable where I am. And there's even, the PUD even has fiber optic that they offer downtown, high-speed fiber optic. But if you're outside of those 8-10 block area, they don't have it. So I can't recommend one recommendation. I have a friend out on, what's the name of that? On Palo Alto, that she uses Hughes, which is a satellite. And the downlink is okay. The uplink is just absolutely atrocious. She jokingly says that it would be easier for her to get in her truck and drive to my place to hand me something than to send me an email. It just depends upon where you live, because it's just not we don't have a uniform infrastructure here. It's very broken up. And I very much like the fact that I can wake up in the morning and eat breakfast and look at does and fawns on in my backyard. But that doesn't mean I have the same high-speed internet that I was used to when I was in suburban Maryland. I had a gig up and a gig down. And I don't think there's any place in the county that has that. So.
There are some areas that are served better, like, for instance, since we have Verizon for our phone service and we get a fairly good signal here, we use their service for our internet as well. I kind of don't like putting all my eggs in one basket, but that's what we've wound up with. There's also another one that we used before that. They have fiber optics that ran into the neighborhood to one house, and then that house agreed to put up a short radio type of a system that covers our neighborhood, which is somewhat smaller than your neighborhood, I believe, but it's like 50 houses or 50 lots here, and so it covers all that pretty well. But and we were happy with that. The heck, it's not Nokia. What the? It's been trying to think of the name, but it just depends on your particular area who can service you well. You might check with your neighbors.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the answer. When I moved here, I was on AT&T. Kathleen had a discount because she was in the military and they offered a really good discount. So we'd had AT&T since we first got cell phones. And we moved into this house and we couldn't get a signal at all. And not having a signal on your cell phone in your own home really torqued me off. So we switched to Verizon. Is Verizon better? Well, where I am, yes, but 2 miles away, maybe not.
Right.
It's I can't give you a uniform answer because it depends because our topology is so convoluted.
Well, if I have the Olepen, but I also have a Gmail account, so which I never use. But if I lost the Olepen because something happened on the peninsula, I could still use my Gmail.
Oh, except that you're not thinking about this the way you should. If you lost your Olepen, you don't have Gmail either because nobody's using the Gmail.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. We'll be an island. Yeah.
So if you want to do something like that, you need to start using it immediately.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who has an AOL account, and I set up the AOL account so it automatically forwards everything that comes into the AOL account to her Gmail account, because that way when it comes to her, when she responds, they may have sent it to AOL, but the response will go to the Gmail. So then the next time they send a message, it'll go to their Gmail. So just gradually over time, the AOL will be irrelevant.
Okay.
And that's the same thing you can do with the OluPen. Just set it up to auto forward to Gmail, and then just respond from Gmail. And after a while, people just use your Gmail.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's after 7. Yes. Michael said that he's not our president, but does our non-president have a report to provide the rest of us?
Did you set up the attendance sheet?
Yes, I did. But I did not log into my email to give you that address. So let's try doing that. I somehow lost my video.
We see you just fine.
Yeah, but I was just moving something out of the way, and Zoom decided. Oh, there you are. I'm trying to log into my email so that I can. Get the meeting link.
Oh, and I was trying to remember what that other service that we had was, and it's Nicola. Nicola is good if you're in a specific area covered by them, so you could try that as well. And I believe the charge was like $80 a month for it, and we get our Verizon for $45 a month. So it made sense to make the move.
Yeah.
I did set up an attendance link, and I can't reach it because I'm not in my own account. I'm in my fake user account, and my fake user doesn't have access to my vice president account. So, heck, that's my summary here. Just heck. The schedule said that we were going to talk about spaces and about Apple Intelligence and Siri AI. And we're not going to do that because I'm suffering from a concussion and just found life difficult. But I want to at least explain what I'm talking about. On Mac, if you have a laptop, you have a limited amount of screen space. And if you want to do something complicated, pretty soon you run out of spaces to tuck things away. And the Mac operating system has built-in ways of handling that, including virtual screens that you don't normally see, but you can flick to those other screens to do things. And you can also have overlapping windows. If any of you have ever used Windows, when you bring up an application, that occupies the entire window. And on the Mac, no, you can tile it so you can have multiple things open at once. And I wanted to talk about that because I've seen several people recently run into problems because they just couldn't get everything they wanted to do on screen at once. And I wanted to show different ways of doing that. For example, the current Mac operating system, if you shove a window up to the top menu bar, it'll actually offer to put that in a different space. And a lot of you have never done that, or you didn't know what it was trying to do. So I was going to demonstrate that, but I'm not up to that today. So instead, I'm going to talk about Apple Intelligence and about what Apple did at their keynote last week. first thing, a couple things about the Worldwide Developer Conference. It's called WWDC, which people think makes it sound like a rock concert, and to some extent it is. They broadcast it for free. It used to be that you had to travel down to San Francisco and pay to stay there for a week, but now they broadcast it for free, and all the sessions you can get online. It is a software developer conference, and anyone want to venture a guess as to how many software developers work on Apple products? Like, is it 10,000?
I heard that they had 1,000 app people turned in 1,000 apps an hour to them for, trying to get them into the system.
Yeah. They run about 1,000 apps, new apps or revised apps an hour.
Yeah,
there are 10 million people who have a developer accounts, and I happen to be one of them. Do I actually develop stuff for Apple? No. I got a developer account because when I worked for the government, I wanted to make sure that what Apple was doing wouldn't break things that I was creating for the general public. So I would download the latest software, I'd play with it, figure out what the bugs were, figure out things that I liked, things I didn't like, lobby Apple to change the things I didn't like. And so that's how I got involved in this. But do I regularly develop software for Apple products? The answer is no. Anyway, so they now have the Worldwide Developer Conference, so they can have these seminars that last an entire week to talk about what Apple is going to be doing in the future. And the focus is mostly on software. They have on occasion introduced new hardware. This year, they didn't introduce any new hardware at all, which is unusual. There wasn't any announcement of any kind of new hardware at all. But the software developer, the keynote, did talk about something that I've mentioned previously when I was talking about Apple Intelligence. I said that I wanted Apple to work on making Apple Intelligence more powerful, yes, but I also didn't want them to abandon the emphasis they have on privacy and security. If you go into ChatGPT, or you go into Anthropomorphic, or you go into Cloud, or you go into Firefly, or any of the other AI models out there, when you submit a question or you give it a paper to look at, or whatever you do, they keep that. They use that information to train their models. And I don't want to do that. There are good reasons not to want to do that. For example, there's a case right now in South Carolina, North Carolina, I don't remember exactly where, of this lawyer who found out that his spouse was going to divorce him because she had uploaded a draft of her divorce decree into an AI model, and he had seen it and tried to kill her. Well, I'm not planning on killing anyone, nor do I really want anyone to try and kill me, but I really don't want any of my personal information to be on Google, to be on Meta, to be any of those places. And I have a lot of practice at keeping my personal information outside of the public domain. Now, if you go into Google and you type in my name, if you put my name in quotes, quote, Lawrence Charters, quote, type it in, press return, you'll see lots and lots of things about me. But those are things that I choose to have out there. I don't want them to know anything about my personal business. And so I don't want them to use that for training. I did not want Apple to expand their AI offerings at the expense of individuals' privacy and security. And I was extremely pleased at what I saw in the keynote, But I'm going to show you a keynote presentation that I did, different than Apple's keynote, in which I talk about what they talked about at the developers conference, but then I'm going to focus particularly about how Apple is doing artificial intelligence and how it's doing it in a way that's actually useful to people. Artificial intelligence, a lot of people say, I have no use of artificial intelligence, which isn't true at all. I don't know if you've ever used Microsoft Word and had it correct your grammar. It'll go through and it'll do things that looks like your Christmas tree. It'll have things red and green and blue saying you didn't do this, you didn't do that. And you can go through, it's up to you to actually fix those things. It's not rewriting it for you, but it's up to you to go and fix those things. And there's a company out called Grammarly that does the same thing with things that you do on the web. It works within your web browser. And as you're typing in a response to somebody on a website, it'll sit there and say, you should put a comma here and do all kinds of things. Those are most of the tools that people use that people would call artificial intelligence. I would say that they're not really, but it's getting there, because most of the artificial intelligence tools that we currently have are actually offshoots of that. They're offshoots of these grammar checkers that have been going around. When I have to admit that when I wrote my first word processor, the first word processor on a computer that I ever saw was one that I wrote. And when a commercial one came out, a few months later, I told my spouse that I was going to buy it, and she said, why? And I said, it has a spell checker. I was an editor of a magazine. I was editor of newspapers. One thing editors know right off the bat, they can't edit their own stuff, because I knew what I was writing. And so I will go through and I'll have misspellings all over the place that I don't notice. I'd notice it in somebody else's work, but I don't notice it in mine. So a spell checker to me was a godsend, because it made it sound like I actually knew how to spell. And that was the first sort of artificial intelligence. Is it really artificial intelligence? No, because if, as an example, this one guy said that his interest was piqued when he saw such and such. He spelled piqued, P-E-A-K-E-D. Well, that is a piqued, but it's not the kind that the same as piqued your interest. And I made fun of this for several weeks before he caught on to the fact that I was using 3 different versions of the word piqued to make fun of him, and he didn't understand why I was doing that. But he eventually caught on. So I'm going to show you a presentation. It's got a lot of text. You feel free to stop and ask questions, but I'm going to show my screen as soon as I remember how to do that. How about this one? And what do you see right now?
We see a space background with weather stuff on it.
You got
Okay.
the weather widget.
The weather
Yeah.
widget. Okay, we can shrink that down because we don't really, although I have to admit I like the weather better today than yesterday.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not going to do this full screen, because when I was doing this full screen, I found out there's an artifact that I didn't like. So I'm going to, you're going to see my navigation off here on the side. We're not going to do spaces. We'll do that some other time. They introduced a lot of things at the Worldwide Developer Conference, and I'm going to go through about 100 and some odd of them fairly quickly. These are things that they improved in OS 27. One thing they were very consistent about this year is they called it OS 27. Even though the Mac operating system has a new name, it's macOS 27 Golden Gate is the name of the next version of the operating system. They still referred to things as OS 27 because the changes that they're making, the improvements, tend to be for the iPhone, the iPad, macOS, Vision OS, in all of them. So I've highlighted some things that I think are intriguing in yellow, like, for example, more relevant spotlight searches, but they have just a whole bunch of things. And here's one screen, and here's another screen, and here's another screen. And I'm not going to bother to stomp on all of these because there are a lot of screens. But I will put my PowerPoint slide up on the Straight Mac.
Lawrence, I just want to say, if you're, and I don't know how probably everyone else feels the same. If you're not up to doing this, I mean, a concussion is a big deal.
Oh,
You
this
know,
is it. No, it was doing something additional that was a strain. I'm actually doing okay today.
okay, all right. Just want to make sure.
Um, but anyway, there are just a lot of things, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But one of them, for example, that I'm really intrigued with is that you can set different levels, audio levels for alarms, so that, for example, in the morning, I like to wake up. My watch doesn't sound an alarm. My watch tickles my wrist, and that's fine because it wakes me up, but it doesn't alarm me. But for other things, like I'm going to go in for a CAT scan on Thursday to check on my concussion. For that, I want to make sure that I don't miss that appointment. So I want that alarm to be something that I won't ignore. Whereas another one, which is remember to take out the trash, yeah, that's important, but it's not time specific. So that can just be a general, alarm. And you'll be allowed to change the alarm volume for different types of alarms, depending upon what it is you want. Not different types, for different alarms. And so there are lots of different things that you can do. Another change, one that I even highlighted here, was that a lot of the operating system changes in the past have been for Apple's apps alone. So that if you were using Safari and they made some security thing, it would apply just to Safari. Well, with the next version, a lot of the things they're going to do work with third-party apps as well. And one, for example, is support media sharing from third-party apps. Well, if somebody sent you something in Google Photos and you'd like it to be in Apple Photos, you can get it, but sometimes you have to go through several steps in order to have it. So I don't know exactly what this is going to look like when it's finally delivered, but the idea of making it easier to share media between different applications, it sounds like a great idea to me. And this has like 160, or I don't remember how many. And during the keynote, they flash this up on screen with these, it's one screen that has these boxes of text floating through it. And somebody captured that and wrote them all out, and I just stuck them into a slide. What OS 27 will work on? It'll work on pretty much anything that's got an Apple Silicon chip. It will not work on anything prior to that. So if you have an Intel-based iMac or you have an Intel-based MacBook, it's not going to work on that. And there are some technical reasons for that, but this is basically the end of the Intels. And I have an Intel-based iMac Pro that I'm really sorry that I won't be able to do these things on that machine anymore. But that machine is also 8 years old, so it's stood in good use. But anyway, anything that's running Apple Silicon, OS 27 will work on it. There are some caveats, which I'll get to in a second. iPads that can use OS 27 are pretty much any of the current machines and going back several generations as well. Like, for example, my iPad mini has an A17 Pro chip, so it can work, but the previous version of it will not. But it's a fairly broad range. iPhones that can use OS 27. This goes back to iPhone 11, which is something of a surprise because the chip in an iPhone 11 is really quite ancient. And I think the reason why they did this was that Last year, when Apple promised that a lot of stuff was coming out for Apple Intelligence, they didn't actually deliver. So this is kind of a makeup for that. They're going to have it go back farther. But there are going to be some caveats to that, which is basically the more powerful the hardware, probably the more benefit you're going to get from it. So an iPhone 11, yeah, it'll probably run it'll probably run OS 27, but will it be able to do that with all the bells and whistles? I don't think so. There's a technical summary of one way in which Apple is doing this new intelligence model, and it's on Apple's website at this address, which you don't have to copy down because I'll put it on the website. But it's basically a quick overview of how they go about doing that. But I have some flow charts for that as well that you won't understand, but I'm going to show you anyway. The two things that came across most powerfully in the keynote was that Apple Intelligence and Siri AI are going to emphasize privacy and security. That when you basically ask your phone or your iPad or your Mac to go out and do something or find something, basically the only people on the planet that are going to know about it are you and your device. One thing that Apple could not do as well as Google was Google has a really good artificial intelligence technology called Gemini. It's had different names and it'll probably have new names in the future, but it's called Gemini. And what I think they spent this last year doing was coming up with a contractual relationship with Google that allows Apple to have Google on the back end, but only after the stuff has been anonymized. In other words, you send a request off to your phone saying, who was president in 1827? Your phone doesn't know that. It goes out and asks Apple. Apple may not know who the president was in 1827. It asks Google, but when it asks Google, it doesn't say who's asking the question, and it doesn't keep the answer. So Google responds, sends it off to Apple. Apple sends it back to you, and then Apple gets rid of the fact that that transaction ever took place.
Lawrence, I have a question.
Yes.
What about when you're interacting with Siri, and you're having a conversation, does Siri is going to remember the first part of the conversation to be able to answer maybe a second part? And where's that information saved so that Siri knows what you're saying?
The answer to that is I don't know exactly. I heard they talked about that a bit, but there are two different parts to Apple Intelligence, the way that Apple is doing it. And one reason why they came up with Siri AI. In the past, when you wanted to go to Chat GPT, you would go into your browser usually, and you go to the Chat GPT site and you type in whatever you wanted, and it would come back in your browser. Apple is pushing that more into Siri. So you would ask Siri a question. Siri, if it knows the answer, would give you the answer. Like, what is my name? It'll tell you what your name is. What day of the week is it? It'll tell you that. What time is it? Tell you all kinds of things. Where do I live? Knows that. All kinds of things it knows. But for things it doesn't know and has to go out, that's when it would talk to Google. Will it remember the question if it was something that Siri knew the answer to already, and you're asking a follow-up to that? The answer is probably yes. If it's something that it did not know and it sent that out someplace else, and you ask a follow-up question, you might have to repeat part of the follow-up question, because it looks like it will have the ability to follow up questions that it is in control of. But if it has to go elsewhere, I'm not sure that that's going to happen.
But I also heard it was going to know what is currently on your screen.
Yes.
And where is that being stored?
Again, that's actually taking place on your device. Your device knows what's on the screen. They've had that character recognition software for quite some time now, so it can read what's on your screen. And if it knows that that's a picture of your daughter, for example, and you can say, oh, well, what is her birthday? And if it knows that that's your daughter, because it's on your machine and it knows that's your daughter, it can say, oh, her birthday is, and it looks it up in whatever record that it has, again, on your machine. That's why it's important to understand exactly who's doing the work. You have a staggering amount of information about yourself on your iPhone, on your Mac, on your iPad. So it can do those kind of follow-ups if it's something, again, that it can see your screen and it knows you're doing that. Like, for example, what you can ask the question that you have a picture of, I don't know that it can actually do this, but as an example, you have a picture of a pomegranate. What can you do with it? Well, if it was up to me, you could throw it away because I don't like pomegranate, but it might suggest that you make something with that pomegranate because it knows that that's a picture of a pomegranate and it's on your machine. If it doesn't recognize it, it can't tell the difference between a pomegranate and a Pomeranian, then it might have to actually go out and ask for things like that. It depends upon what its knowledge base can encompass. And so it's looking at privacy and security, and it's doing as much of that as possible on your device, because that way it doesn't even have to go outside to ask anybody else.
Have you tried it on the beta version of 27?
I cannot answer that question.
Oh, okay.
This is a kind of a flow chart of how it works. And again, this is going to be in the slide deck that I put up on the site. But here is your iPhone or your iPad or your Mac. You ask it questions. If it's something that it knows how to do, it'll process it on the device. It figures out what parts it might be able to do itself and what parts it can't do. If it can do it all itself, it'll talk to you. Like you say, where's my picture of Timmy? And it knows that Timmy is your cousin, and it brings up a picture of Timmy. So it can do that all on the phone because it knows all that stuff, assuming that you've ever bothered to tell it that that weird guy is your cousin Timmy. If it doesn't know what it is, it sends it out to over the internet. It's encrypted, and it sends it out over the internet to Apple's private cloud compute, and they call it private cloud compute because it's a Apple intelligence, but it's not used by anybody else in your instance other than you. You might be using their private cloud compute along with a million other people at a time, but in terms of your question, it's off in its own little enclave, and it's not being shared with anybody else. And if it can come up with the answer, it sends it back to you. And it's anonymized so that Apple doesn't know where it's coming from and you don't know where it's coming from. And exactly how that encryption works, don't worry about that. How it knows how to send it back to you, well, it's sending it from one key token to another key token. Key tokens generated on the fly. It says it got it from this address, it sends it back, and then it throws away the key so it doesn't really have any way of talking to it again. This is for talking between you and Apple.
Can you ask for the source of this answer?
I don't know that. For some things you can, but for other things, like if it's a picture of your cousin Timmy and it's in your photos library, I don't know if it would tell you that or not. Probably just show you Timmy. And you could say, he's out of your Apple photos. I don't know what it would do. Haven't tried something like that. If it can't answer it between your device and Apple's private cloud, it gets a little bit more complicated. So your question goes out to Apple's cloud out here. And then if it needs to get more information, like who was the first president who wasn't born in the United States? Believe it or not, our first several presidents weren't born in the United States. So who was the first president who was born in the United States? Apple might know that, but it probably doesn't, and it would go out and ask Google. So when it goes to Google, it sends the key, this key that it created on the fly to accompany the question, sends it out to Google. Google looks for it, parses out the question, figures out what it is, and then sends it back. When it sends it back, the Apple has it in what they call these ephemeral VMNs, virtual machines. It uses that to process the request that it gets back from Google, sends it back onto you, and then it destroys that virtual machine. So it just all goes poof. Apple doesn't keep a record of the request. It doesn't keep a record of the answer. And Google doesn't have any information from you. All they have is this anonymous request. Now, if you happen to send a question that you explicitly identify yourself, like, did Lawrence Charters attend the 1989 Macworld conference? If that was your question, and Apple doesn't know the answer, and it goes out to Google, and Google looks it up and finds out that you were registered at the 1989 Apple Macworld conference, and sends it back to you, it doesn't know who answered the question, but it does know that somebody asked that about Lawrence Charters. Because yeah, it had to know at least that much, so it will know that. But in terms of who asked the question, what they wanted to use it for, what they're doing with it, has no idea. So this is basically how it works. And the keys to this are these keys, these secure keys that Apple creates and then Apple destroys. Those are the things that protect your data. When it's going out, Google gets nothing. When it comes back, they destroy the key. And without the key, you have no idea what's going on. And these virtual machines, again, after it completes the request, it gets rid of the virtual machine. And a virtual machine is basically just a pocket of memory that's being used on their servers, and it's being used for that task. And after that task is over, they just get rid of it and they reallocate the memory for other things. So this is basically how it works. And again, I know this is probably looking weird, but it's how it works. I'm going to give you some examples. A couple days ago, I was using the AP app on my phone, and it said, Washington, United States, no article available in your area. Now, this cracked me up because it actually makes me feel good when there's no national news about the area that I'm in. There's no wildfires, there's no mass shootings, there's no ferry boat that went aground. It's nice that there's no news about it. Is this an example of artificial intelligence? And the answer is no. When you go into the AP News app, you get to specify what your areas of interest are. My interests are women's basketball. I really like women's basketball, Washington State, and a few other things. So I go in there and I specify that. If there's no news about Washington State, it comes back and says, no article available in your area. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't articles about lots of other things, but just nothing that particular moment about Washington State or about women's basketball or whatever it is. And this is not AI. This is basically just a kind of a list processing, and I'm not on that. Nothing I wanted was in that particular list at that point. So this doesn't take AI. This is just basic computer programming. Here's an example of something that says, it's official, the Beatles' first album, Please Please Me, was released closer to the 1800s than to the present day, and it shows the number of dates from the 1800s till today, and to the Beatles album, and then to today. And the Beatles were closer to the 1800s than you were to their first album, because we're getting old, and that was a long time ago. This is not exactly AI either, because a human came up with the question, a human figured out the answer. Now, he probably used a computer calendar, but this is not AI. It's just a clever question and clever answer. Here is a chart of where you're likely to get bear attacks. And it says Mercury, Venus, approximately no risk of bear attack. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, also no risk of bear attack. Is this AI? No, this is a cartoon that somebody drew that is 100% correct, but it's not artificial. It's not artificial intelligence. And this is a list of all data centers in Europe in the year 1437. And as you notice, the map is completely blank. It's just a map of Europe. And is that AI? No, it's just a human came up with a way of telling a joke, and it's nothing artificial intelligent. This happened on my phone. I got a message that says Apple Pay wallet protection auto change charge alert for your Apple ID, $537.40, blah, 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 blah. It's got a bunch of verbiage here. Apple flagged this as possibly fraudulent, but it was up to me to decide that it was spam and up to me to press the little button that says delete and report spam. So it's not really AI, it's just Apple's programming doing what I asked it to do. I told it to flag suspicious messages, and it thought this was suspicious. So none of that's AI. This is the illustration I was going to use for tonight's talk that I didn't deliver on spaces. And I typed into Google Gemini, said I wanted a photograph of a penguin being very anxious about trying to keep track of what's on 10 computer screens. So it was a puffin that was anxious about trying to read 10 computer screens. And there are actually 11 computer screens, so hey, I got a bonus, plus a laptop screen, plus an iPad screen, and 2 phones. So it gave me more than I asked for. So we got a penguin, we have a puffin that's really upset. And if you could zoom in, there's actually something in here that, it says this coffee cup back here is puffin patrol, some nice little things that I didn't really ask for, but it pleases me greatly. Google Gemini created this photo for me. Is that artificial intelligence? I'd still say no. It's a tool that I used to create something, and we call it artificial intelligence, but I was the one who created the problem. I was the one who set the parameters of how I wanted it to be displayed, and it generated it using generative AI. But is it really artificial intelligence? No. We've had the ability to do this. You know, Apple's been, not Apple, Industrial Light and Magic has been doing things like this for quite some time. It's not really intelligence, but it is what we currently classify as AI. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is a little bit more impressive. Now, I told Gemini to create a video for me of a puffin trying to use an iPhone, trying to answer an iPhone. And I hope that this will play and you can see it. And we have a very frustrated puffin because it lacks the equipment to answer the phone. Now, is this AI? This is really getting close to AI because I typed in maybe 15 words and it created that video. And it's a photorealistic puffin, and that's an identifiable iPhone. It's one of the older ones that's got a mechanical button.
And you didn't tell it what kind of background you wanted or anything?
No, I think puffin was kind of a dead giveaway.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that's the kind of thing that is what I would consider closer to being AI. Now, some things to think about. If I do this today, I happen to have a Google One account. I can't remember if that's what they call it. It's a paid account with Google because I have a whole bunch of email and I've got websites and a bunch of other stuff. So I'm paying Google for my account. And if I ask this, I'm sure that because I have a paid account, I will get a better level of service than people who are doing this for free. What a lot of these AI companies do is they give you tokens, and you get so many odd tokens for this account and for this level of account, and you get more tokens for higher levels and so on and so forth. So how many tokens did I burn up creating that video? have no idea. I suspect that for Apple's AI that talks to Google, that there's going to be probably a very basic level that has very little access. And if you want more, I think it's probably going to require that you have an iCloud Plus account. The iCloud Plus accounts cost money. That's when you want more storage for your iCloud. But if you pay for more storage in iCloud, you automatically get things like the privacy protection on your browser and a bunch of other things that come at present. But I think you also probably would get more access to Google AI. Why? Because it's costing Google money to do this, and it's costing Apple money to support this. So I suspect that if you want to do more with AI, you're going to have an iCloud Plus. That is not clear. They haven't made that clear, and it might be a while before I have a clear answer on that. Apple AI limitations. The more powerful your device, the more it can do. And if you look at the amount of RAM that's on an iPhone 17 Pro Max compared to that iPhone 11, the iPhone 17 has a lot more memory available to it. It also has more storage available to it. AI is going to require both memory and storage to do its work. Because if you ask it a question like, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? That's a joke.
For you to say.
Yes. Well, also, I'm not feeling all great. So tongue twisters are a little hard. But Apple right now can give you an instant answer for that. Why? Because billions of other people have asked that because it's an obvious thing to try and trick Siri. But if you're doing this with AI and you say, generate me a photograph of this, that's going to take storage both.
Unlock your device first.
No, thank you. That's going to take storage to actually parse out the question. It's going to take storage on your machine to send off a query to Apple that might send it off to Google and then come back. It's going to take RAM and it's going to take storage space. If you have a phone and you look at the iPhone storage setting in your settings and you're almost completely maxed out, you probably are going to have trouble using Apple AI simply because you don't have enough space on your device to work with. So the more powerful your device, the more it can do, the more free RAM and more storage you have, the more you can do. You can do more if you are more skilled and educated. And I'm not doing this because I'm trying to be an elitist. It's just that if you have a word processor and you have a degree in English, you probably will be able to use that word processor more fluently than someone who is struggling to get out of junior high. You can do more if you have more imagination. Now, as you might have noticed, I've got a thing for penguins and puffins, so I can ask them to do ridiculous things. If you don't have that tendency and you're a much more linear thinker, then you probably won't be able to do as much.
So, yeah, I just learning a new graphic design program, and I've never used AI before, but there's AI built into it. And so I'm starting to learn that just what you were saying, and I do have an English degree, but if I can describe to this AI thing and type out exactly what I am thinking, like the details, using these brand colors and it needs to, this is the date, this is the time and all that, and in the format, it'll spew out several different versions of whatever this thing is that I'm trying to create. And it is a matter of being able to say it in a very clear way. It's pretty cool. And I'm just learning it now, but that way of being able to explain it to AI in a way that it can put it back. It's pretty cool.
What's the name of the program?
Canva.
Oh, I'm not familiar with that one.
It's a graphic design program.
Well, yeah, but I use several of them. I just haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, Canva.
A lot of it has to do if you forget the fact that it's got the word compute in it. We don't actually use computers for computations.
Right.
They perform things by doing computations. We use them as communications tool. My iPhone and sitting in my pocket is a full-blown Unix computer, more powerful than any Unix computer in the world in the year 2000. I mean, it's just unbelievably powerful, and it wanders around in my pocket and answers spam for me. But we use them as communications devices and not as computers. However, when it comes to using computers, the more you can articulate what it is you're trying to do, the better luck you're going to have at actually getting what you want. That puffin answering the phone, I was astonished that I got what I wanted on my first try. The one with the puffin and all those screens, that was actually my second try. The first try was okay, but I wanted to tweak it a bit. But again, being able to figure out, a lot of people, they say, well, I've got tomato soup and I've got cheese in the refrigerator. What can I make with that for dinner? Well, the answer is probably not a lot. But if you were to give it a few more ingredients to work with, you could probably ask Gemini or Apple Intelligence or Siri to come up with a recipe for something. But you have to be able to provide it with enough building blocks to get something that's useful.
Yeah.
I can't remember the movie that I saw. It was many, many years ago. This woman who had no money at all went into a department store when they had soda bars, and she asked for hot water, and she asked for a ketchup, and she made herself tomato soup. If you're desperate, yes, that's tomato soup. But if you have more ingredients and you can more articulate what you want, you get better results. In her case, the hot water was free and the ketchup was free, so that's what she had. She had tomato soup. And again, the other thing that I wanted to say is I don't know if it's going to require iCloud Plus to do this, but a lot of the stuff that they were talking about in terms of the encryption is built into iCloud Plus and does not come with the vanilla version of iCloud that you get for free. So that remains to be seen. Things that you can do with, actually, I should have had this other thing out here first. I'll get to that. Things that you can do with the new Apple AI, because it's built into Siri. Because it's built into Siri and Siri can talk to almost anything, including Apple passwords, one of the things you will be able to do is go into the password app and say this. Most of us have, if you use Apple passwords for storing passwords, most of us have sites that we've been to that have had compromised passwords. It doesn't necessarily mean you've done anything wrong. With the forthcoming release of OS 27, you'll be able to ask passwords to redo all the compromised passwords. It'll just go through all of them. And if it's a weak password or it's been compromised or if it's been repeated, it'll go through all of those and issue new ones. It does that by logging into the website, going through the security protocol for that site, assuming that the site supports this, and creating a new password and then logging off. If you did this by hand, it could take you 20 minutes for each one of these.
Yeah.
So this is a huge, huge win for sanity. I would suggest that for a lot of you, before you actually tell your Mac or your iPhone to do this, that you go through your list of passwords and passwords. And if you're not using that anymore, just delete your account on that site. There's no reason to reset the password if you intend to go back there. And some of these things don't even exist anymore. I found out that Passwords has an account of mine for CompuServe. I'm pretty sure CompuServe doesn't exist anymore. And I know the source doesn't exist. The source, again, dates back to the 1990s, and it doesn't exist anymore. So just delete those things, and then you won't spend time trying to have it contact sites that don't exist anymore. But this is going to be something that comes out with OS 27, and I think it's a huge boost for security. Another thing that you can do, and as a photographer, I'm not sure that I'm really wild about this. I take documentary style photographs. When I take pictures, I take them to document things. I was a newspaper editor, magazine editor, and I don't want to create things that didn't exist. So I'll go out and I'll take a photograph, and if that photograph doesn't work or whatever, I'll take another one until I find one that does. I went up to Vancouver, BC, to see my daughter, granddaughter, and son-in-law, and I was up there for 10 days, and I took 3,000 photographs. And of those 3,000 photographs, most of them are never going to see the light of day, because if I didn't like something, I'd take another one. With the new Apple Photos and Apple Intelligence, you can do things that you could not do before. You can reframe photographs. So if you're shooting down on someone and you decide it's better to shoot up, it'll allow you to edit it in such a way that it looks like you're shooting upward. Or if you're shooting somebody and in the background there's a palm tree and a fence, and over on the side there's a garage with junk in front of it, it'll allow you to extend the palm trees and other things off to the side to cover up the fact that there's a garage there, which is really cool. I'm not sure that I actually like that, because I like photographs to capture reality rather than to paper it over with fiction. But that's a cool thing to be able to do. And it'll also be able to automatically just clean up some things like over exposed spots or underexposed spots. I haven't played with this, but it sounds cool, even though I have some qualms about it. Going still on photographs with Apple Photos. When Apple Photos first came out, I was not very impressed with it, because I used Lightroom from Adobe, which I think is a much better package for keeping track of photographs. Photos didn't impress me, but the new Photos over the past several years has gradually gotten to be really quite impressive. And among other things, with the version coming out this fall, it'll allow you to do things like it'll automatically create a collection of photographs taken by you. So it won't have photographs that were taken by other people that people have sent to you, or screenshots or things like that. It'll only be things that you took. And that might be something that you want. And the other one is you can have identity documents like passports and driver's licenses and so on and so forth, things that are identity documents that you might want to carry with you. Even if you're not carrying your wallet, you can still have access to it. It'll automatically create a collection of those things. And all of these collections, by the way, you also can password protect, so that if somebody grabs your phone, they don't necessarily have access to this stuff. So that's going to be coming out in Photos. And other things you can do that you could not that you can't currently do. You can ask questions that require data from multiple sources. I can ask my SIRI to turn on my TV, and I say, SIRI, turn on Dungeness. Dungeness is the name of my Apple TV, so it can turn it on. Once it's turned on, I can say, launch YouTube TV on Dungeness, and it launches my list of channels that I have, and so on and so forth. Well, in the future, you can go beyond that and say, set an alarm for my appointment today at Olympic Medical Center. which is using multiple applications at once. It uses your calendar, it uses alarms, uses clock, uses messages. So it goes through messages to find out what the thing that Olympic Medical Center sent. It knows, it can then examine what time it said, and it can figure out, okay, I like my alarms 15 minutes in advance, 30 minutes in advance, and do all of this sort of stuff from multiple different applications at once, all on your phone or all on your Mac. Or you can say, notify me when the price drops on the 70 to 300 zoom lens at Glazer's Camera. Glazer's Camera is a big camera store in Seattle. And if you're a camera person, I highly recommend you never go to Glazer's, because you'll leave poorer than you went in. Has just amazing stuff. But if their website notices a drop in price, Safari will check it and say, okay, it had a drop in price, and it'll send me a reminder that there's a drop in price. Have I tried this? Have no idea if this is going to actually work the way it's described, but I'm intrigued with the possibility. Show me the photo of Mount Shasta I took last week. Again, it can do that on your own device without talking anything else, assuming it could recognize Mount Shasta, goes through your photos, looks at Mount Shasta, and it can bring it up. And Mount Shasta can identify one of two ways. Either you explicitly stuck a label on it saying, hey, this is Mount Shasta, or it's looking at the GPS coordinates on the photo and says, this is probably Mount Shasta. But right now, I ask it to do that, and it probably is not going to work. I can ask photos to do things like, show me airplanes. Type in airplanes, shows me a lot of airplanes. But it will also make mistakes. It'll give me a picnic table. Why will it give me a picnic table? It's got a horizontal surface. It's got splayed out legs on it. It looks like an airplane too, Siri. But I'm assuming that that's going to get a little bit brighter in the near future. Being able to articulate questions like that and get useful results is something I'm looking forward to. Another thing that I want to, that might seem kind of esoteric, but is important, Apple has pretty much, if you look at the keynote and how they presented the stuff, Siri is the intelligent assistant that we've been using for years. And Spotlight is the indexing function on the Mac and on your iPhone. And Apple Intelligence is their cloud name for all of this stuff. Basically, they're now collapsing all of these, and the way to do most of this stuff is going to be through Siri. You want to ask a question, you ask Siri. And Siri can go out and use Apple Spotlight to find files, can use Apple Intelligence to ask for information above and beyond what it can find. But they're really pushing the fact that Siri is going to be the interface for it. Why? It's because people use Siri all the time. I use Siri several times a day, even on days when I'm not doing that much. It's just it's a really powerful way of using a device, especially when you're busy doing something else. I was washing dishes yesterday and had a phone call from a woman whose spouse just died. And the phone announced that she called, and I told Siri to answer the phone. I could chat with her on the phone while I was washing dishes. Actually, I had to stop washing dishes because dishes make an awful lot of noise. You can't actually talk, but my hands were still wet and I could still talk to her. Didn't have to touch anything. I could just do that with my voice. Making that the kind of gateway into doing more things, I think is a huge plus. Any questions about that? Because I did talk a lot.
Thank you for the graphic thing. That was really very clarifying.
Yes, it was.
I will post the slides on the Strait Mac site, because again, just the list of, I don't know how many pages, 20 pages worth of things that they're planning on updating. those had nothing to do with Apple Intelligence. Those are just things that they are fixing or enhancing. There are quite a few innovations in women's health, for example, that they're adding to the iPhone and to Apple Watch. And there are just changes to cosmetically. People have had trouble if they have an iPad. The iPad now allows you to tile applications on the iPad, which was something that they introduced with iPad OS 26. A lot of people still don't quite understand how that works. And they're making some slight tweaks to the appearance to make it more obvious how to do that sort of stuff. And there's just literally hundreds of changes they're making to what we have already. But the big message for most of the keynote was that they're going in with both feet into intelligence, and they're doing it in such a way that they're emphasizing privacy and security, your privacy and your security. One interesting kind of side effect, though, is that it's not going to be immediately available in the EU. Now, the EU, unlike the United States, has no privacy laws that apply to corporations. Nothing. If the corporation has your private phone number, they are not required to do anything about it. They can use it as often as they want because we don't have any privacy laws. The EU has very strong privacy laws. So the EU has strong privacy laws. Apple's new operating system is going to emphasize privacy and security. Why is it going to take a while to be in the EU? It's because in the EU, they basically want to have access to Apple's security in order to make sure that it's really secure. They want Apple to compromise their security to prove that their security is secure. And Apple is saying no. Apple's probably going to continue to say no until Europe gives up and just decides on a different course. They had a similar thing where the British government wanted Apple to give them a security certificate that allowed the British government to examine all iPhone traffic going in and out of Britain. And Apple said no. And Apple fought with Britain for that for a couple of years before Britain eventually gave up. I'm hoping it doesn't take that long this time. It was an interesting Apple Developers Conference, and I'm greatly looking forward to seeing what happens this fall when they bring out the new iPhone, iPad, Mac, Vision OS software.
What will happen when you take your iPhone to visit your daughter in England and you're able to use all this artificial intelligence in the US? When you get to England, what happens?
I suspect I won't be able to use it in England.
Okay. Any idea how they'll keep that from happening?
Oh, yeah, because the apps are geofenced. Geofenced is basically, it knows where you are. And depending upon where you are, it applies this set of protocols. And if you're someplace else, it applies that set of protocols. Apple did it that way because, for example, if you have a phone that you bought in the United States and you're a Belarus citizen, Belarus really likes to spy on their own people. They don't want people going into Belarus and evading what the police can do. So what happens when that phone that was purchased in the United States, you go into Belarus, it starts following Belarus law. Apple basically has to do it that way. Now, there are some cases, though, where the developers screw up. I was curious about this icon that appeared on my iPad. It was a yellow icon with a B on it. And I happen to know that the B is the symbol for Manchester, England. And Manchester adopted the B as their symbol because it was a city of industry and they built trains and all kinds of other stuff. So they were all busy little bees. I suspected it was for the Manchester bus service. So I launched it, and it told me that there were no Manchester buses available anywhere in Squim, which was a real shock. I mentioned this to my daughter, and my daughter said that she got rid of off of her phone because it's improperly geofenced. She bought her phone in the United States, and because she bought her phone in the United States, it's geofenced, so it doesn't work in Manchester. So it would work for me, but give me no information, or it won't work for her in England. That's not geofencing. That's a programming error. They screwed up, because it should be based upon where the phone is located, not where it was purchased. It should be based upon where the phone is located. And I thought that was hilariously funny, but it's not really an Apple problem. It's the developer for the app just screwed up. But that's how it knows how to properly what the restrictions are that apply. For example, child pornography rules in Great Britain changed as of June 1st, and they're much more draconian. Pornography is prohibited from being displayed to children under 18. Just absolutely prohibited. What's the restriction in the United States? There really isn't any. It changes from state to state, city to city, and it's not enforceable in the United States. But because the entire country went this way in Great Britain, if you show up in Great Britain with your US phone, instantly you probably aren't going to, you're not going to be able to view your favorite porn sites because it doesn't know how old you are. Because it's geofenced. So there's a right way and a wrong way to do almost anything, and the Manchester bus system screwed up. I was really disappointed that I couldn't get a bus to Manchester in Squim, though. Probably just as well. The gas bill from here to England would be horrific.
Lawrence?
Apple
Yes.
Intelligence be put into CarPlay in your car?
The answer to that is it will be. For example, you can tell it to optimize a route and so on and so forth, allegedly. The trouble with CarPlay, because CarPlay is in an automobile, and automobiles are also covered by transportation rules, it won't be as full featured as when you're sitting there and just talking to your phone. It's got to be much more constrained, because you're not allowed to create a distraction in the car. So having it help avoid distractions, like if you're going down the road and say, take me to the McDonald's in Silverdale, will it do that? Yeah, because it doesn't take you away from what you're doing, which is driving. But anything that can interfere with what you're driving, it'll probably be constrained. Carol, did you have a question?
I do. I want to know about your fall and you said you had a concussion.
Yes, I was taking someone to an appointment, and as they started to get out of my car, they started to fall, and I was intent on keeping them from falling. And when I stood up, I banged my head into the door frame of my car, and it's been bothering me now for about 10 days. So it's nothing spectacular. It's just...
Will it take just time to get over it then?
It took me time to have someone look at it. When immediately after this happened, I was taking this person to their appointment, and I wasn't able to address it. And then the next day, I didn't really feel that bad. It wasn't until a day after that I was feeling bad. I tried to get a same date appointment at Olympic Medical, and they told me the soonest I could get an appointment was July 15th, which is kind of far in the future, especially if you have a concussion. I happened to be in Port Angeles the next day. I went into the ER hoping I could be seen there. After spending 5 hours in the ER without even being logged in, I left. So
So
it
what
took me.
about just like the Squim walk-in clinic?
The Squim Walk-in Clinic, I knew from experience that they don't really like this kind of thing. They'd much prefer, for a thing that might be a concussion, they'd much prefer you go to the ER.
Uh,
But today did manage to get the primary care clinic to see me. But I did that because, among other things, my spouse was a nurse, and I wrote a message to the care team. I explained what the problem was. I explained how I tried A, I tried B, I tried C, and they put me on a wait list, and they had a vacancy today. So I got seen instead of July 15th, I got seen on June 6th, 16th. So saved almost a month.
wow.
The healthcare system in the United States is under severe strain, and it's not just here.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Is Apple Wallet usable in Washington State?
I use Apple Wallet all the time. Are you talking about the Apple, the driver's license ID and wallet?
Yeah.
No,
It,
no.
no, I thought you could add your license to the wallet in some states and it'll be
Yes,
used
but
like at the airport.
Washington is not one of the states.
Oh, okay.
Colorado is, Virginia is. Virginia, which did not give women the right to own property until 1996, Virginia allows you to put your ID, your driver's license into Apple Wallet. Washington State, which has had women politicians since the 1890s, hasn't done that. So I have no idea why. But it's up to the states. It's not, what can I say? There are lots of other things you can do, like, for example, Bloedel Reserve, which is a garden on Bainbridge. You can put your membership card for Bloedel Reserve into Apple Wallet. That struck me as really wild that you could do that for a garden, but you can't stick your ID for the state into your Apple Wallet. Just strange. I have opinions, but
So do you, from a standpoint of artificial intelligence, there's two levels, well, probably multi, but you're probably already thinking about what I'm gonna ask. I don't know how to frame it well, but you know, the futuristic Terminator, where when it was able to start actually thinking on its own, bad things happen, and that is a belief that will happen when it gets that capability, that there could be really bad things happening. Do you think that there are people working on that, or it is working on that now?
okay, that's not a simple question, but
No.
it is a good question. First of all, I want to back up a bit. Most of what we hear about artificial intelligence is not artificial intelligence. It's not
Right.
independent problem solving. It's not independent solution. When I wanted that picture of a puffin, I came up with the problem. I outlined what I wanted the solution to look like, and then I was the one who decided that it had actually done what I wanted. So it was a tool that I was using. It wasn't an artificial intelligence. Are there things that are good at, they're actually doing things that humans cannot do? Yes, and one of them is the current artificial intelligence engines are large language models, which means they're really good at grammar. Well, what is something that involves grammar that really is a problem that humans can't seem to be able to solve? And I'll tell you the answer to that is programming. There are trillions of bytes of code out there that in your web browser, on websites, all kinds of code out there. Most of them done by human beings, a lot of them done incompetently by human beings. Well, several of the large AI companies have found out that if you take computer code and you feed it to the large language models, they can find defects. Well, that is really great, because if they can find the defects, then you know what to fix. But it's also really bad, because if the good guys can find the defects in the code, the bad guys can too. So what do I think the Chinese are doing right now and the Russians are doing right now? They're feeding all the Western language code that they can find into AI engines, trying to find defects so that they can exploit them. So that's a good news, bad news. But it is something that large language models are really good at. They're really good at grammar. So in most modern programming languages, you end a statement using a semicolon. And one of the most common ways to have an error is just miss a semicolon. There's a computer language called Lisp that was used for artificial intelligence research for a lot. And Lisp actually stands for something, but I can't ever remember what the real word is, because what most people who programmed in Lisp used to call it is LISP stands for lots of irritating, silly parentheses, because Lisp has a whole bunch of parentheses. And if you miss one, your program fails or does something really ridiculous. But finding those flaws, that's something that large language models are really good at. Is that really artificial intelligence? It's getting close, simply because it's not something that really we're very good at doing. So it's getting close. But are the computers ganging up on us to take over the world? No. The largest thing that humanity has ever created is Google. Google is millions of servers scattered throughout the entire globe. They go out and index all of these websites, so they basically have all that knowledge. It's a really, really powerful tool, the likes of which it exceeds the atom bomb, it exceeds a nuclear aircraft carrier. Almost any project we've ever done, it vastly exceeds them in terms of scope and capability. But it's not intelligent. It can't create its own problems. It can't solve its own problems. It needs somebody to direct it. There's a joke that was popular when microcomputers first came out. It basically was saying, never trust a computer you can't throw out the window. Well, one of the advantages of a microcomputer is that if it was acting stupid, you could pick it up, go over to the window, and throw it out the window. And that's basically one way of also maintaining control. Oh, you're going to act up? Just toss you out the window. I use the analogy of what the big flaw was with HAL and Colossus and all of these science fiction computers. They didn't have an off switch. All of my computers, and this house has like a dozen, I know where the off switch is for all of them. So I'm very much in control of the artificial intelligence, because I know that if the power goes out, I'm in control.
How do they check?
I might be really sad because my computers aren't working, but at least I know I'm in control. What was your question?
How does AI know that maybe the information they went out and got is wrong?
It doesn't. That's one reason why you have so many of the lawyers getting in trouble for having citing cases that are actually hallucinations.
Right.
If you have a novel that references a case, Marbury versus Madison, which is a real case, but it's Marbury versus Edison, and it cites that as a case because it was in a novel, you suck that into these AI language models. They can't tell the difference between that fake case and a real one. And Giuliani was disbarred for using fake cases, and a whole bunch of others are. There was a whole huge lawsuit, multi-million-dollar lawsuit in California. No, it wasn't in California. Can't remember where it was. That was thrown out just a couple of weeks ago, in which it was Arizona. Both sets of lawyers were using AI, and they were basically throwing fake cases at each other. And
well, how can Apple guarantee security from picking up bad data?
It's being used as a tool. It's not going to necessarily, if you ask which presidents were born outside the United States? There's a set list of answers. It can send you that list. It's like 8 people. But if
But
you
what if
ask,
somebody put a bad list out there and it grabs the bad list?
well, if there's more than one copy of those lists, that's the sort of thing that's replicated. Like, what is 2 plus 2? Billions of things out there are going to tell you that it's 4. And somebody might have some site that says it's 3, but the consensus pretty much is going to be 4. Plus,
But does it check the
computers-
consensus?
well,
It
yes,
doesn't check it does?
yes. Anytime you have an answer, there's a weighted answer, and the more people that agree with that, you come along to, well, how do we pick president? It's the one that the majority of the people who bothered to vote pick that person. Is that person right? According to the election law, that person is right. And that's basically how these search engines work, and that's how a lot of these things. The problem with the case law that we have is that Giuliani was trying to create new case law. So he wanted something that had never been done before. There was no precedent. And so it went out and found precedents. And the precedents came out of Tom Clancy book. Another precedent came out of a Patterson book. I can't remember what Patterson's name, but he writes these thrillers. Okay. As far as the search engine was concerned, those must be legitimate cases. It matches the circumstance, so therefore it must be the answer. And Giuliani threw it in his court brief, and it got him disbarred.
Have you tried to use AI to create a website?
I have something that I'm working on right now that I'm not ready to show anybody. It's not so much creating a website. I had an AI. I work with somebody else to ingest a website that I'd already made that had gigabytes worth of data, and it created a wiki out of it. A wiki is a knowledge base. Created a wiki out of the stuff that it ingested. So it indexed all the articles. It did summaries of what the articles were about. It could extract the major topics. It was a fascinating exercise. And if and when I get a few things fixed, I'll show it to people. But that was done by using Claude, which is CLAUDE, that artificial intelligence agent. And the person who was working with me is a former professor at George Mason University, professor of computer science. And it was an interesting thing because I was the editor of that magazine. So it was sucking up a whole bunch of things that I'd written and stuff that I'd edited by other people. And it was a fascinating exercise. But it didn't create a website, it created a wiki, which is basically an index of this website with summaries and speculations. My spouse had written some things, and it, among other things, theorized that Kathleen Charters was the spouse of Lawrence Charters, because again, it's an AI engine. It didn't know, so it could theorize that, but it didn't really know. And it also theorized that Lawrence Charters and Lawrence I. Charters were the same person, but again, it wasn't sure. But it theorized that they were the same person. So it was an interesting exercise. And that was a big project. I mean, 4.5 gigabytes worth of stuff.
Last question.
Yeah.
If AI gave you an answer from a Tom Clancy novel and you asked it the source of its answer, would it tell you that it was a Tom Clancy novel it got it from?
It depends upon how explicit you can make the question. Like, for example, if you ask for, you have tomatoes and you have a bunch of ingredients, and you say, give me a recipe for this, and it comes up with a recipe. And you say, and then you ask, why did you pick pimentos for this recipe? It may not be able to do that because it's a collage of multiple things. And that's one of the problems that you can quiz people about things like that, but it's very difficult to quiz a database about something like that.
But what if you said, what book did you get the recipe from, or what source was the recipe from?
But see, a lot of the recipes that you can get from AI engines are not out of a book. They're
Oh,
dynamically created based upon the ingredients. It knows that if you have peanuts and you have honey and you have this and you have that, that you can make sticky things like peanut clusters and so on and so forth. It doesn't need a specific recipe. If you throw in something new, it can say, well, you might be able to do this, simply because the preponderance of the evidence says that these things will work together. But
oh,
did it come out of a specific book? It may not be able to tell you that, because
yeah.
it's not doing that.
Could Giuliani have prevented his mishap, or, well, I'm going to call it that, by specifying that the precedents have to come out of the state code annotated or the federal code annotated? Could he have done something like that?
As a lawyer, that went and got him off the hook, because as a lawyer, you submit a document to the court and you say, this is my work. I stand by this. I did this research. You are not saying somebody says this. You are saying, I am presenting this to you as something factual. And what's the way to prevent factual fraud in that? Check your work. Did he do
Right.
that? He
But I'm
did.
saying if he had set those kinds of limits, then he would have been able to check, because you can check those different code annotated.
Well,
I
yes.
mean, it'll either be there or not, according, it's like
Yeah.
saying this is on page 56 of the King James Version of the Bible, something like that.
Well,
It'll either be there or it won't.
depending, do you know how many printings of the King James Bible?
Well, but you know what I'm saying, that the one, you know what I mean? Because you can
Yes,
specify in other
yes.
words, you set fairly strict parameters. I don't know whether, I mean, it should follow that, right? It should.
There are times where that's not useful. For example, Washington State annotated code is online for the state of Washington, and you can actually specify down to the paragraph level. It's a website and so on and so forth. You can do that for Washington State. For a lot of states, you can't do that.
Plus, I've read that if it can't find something like that, it, in some cases, will make it up.
Well, yes, but that's the hallucination part. The hallucination means that it still found something that it could come up with, but what it came up with may not have been from a real source. For example, Hunt for Red October. Hunt for Red October is a novel by John Clancy about this Russian submarine defecting to the U.S., and it was a great movie. It's a good novel. Is that real or is that invented?
What do you mean, the novel?
The Hunt for Red October.
Well, I don't know, but it might be one of those deals where it's based on a real incident, but that's so broad.
It is based upon a real incident. It's based upon the capture of U-555 in the Middle Atlantic during World War II by Admiral James Gallery. Admiral James Gallery, without bothering to tell anybody else, decided he was going to capture a U-boat. And he captured one. And in the process, he also captured an ultra machine, which he thought was hot stuff. Churchill wanted Gallery executed. Why? Because nobody told Gallery that Ultra existed. Nobody told Gallery that Enigma machines existed. So he went out and captured, first wartime capture of an Enigma machine, and Churchill was afraid that it might give away the war, because the Allies had been using Enigma captures for months, and Gallery might have blown the whole thing. So Churchill wanted Gallery, an American admiral, executed for doing a really great job. The Hunt for Red October is basically a fictionalized version, using the Soviet Union instead of Nazi Germany, about the capture of U-555.
That's not the one that's in the Chicago Museum of Science
Yes.
and Engineering. Oh, it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, it's the one
I've
that's at
been
the
in
field.
it.
Well, it's something that I've wanted to do, but I haven't been there. I want to see I'm a World War II historian. That's my specialty. It's a different ocean, but still,
Yeah.
I would like to see the U-boat. But that's based upon a real story. But is it fictional in terms of the Hunt for Red October? Yes. But is it based upon something that happened? Well, sort of. It gets complicated. And there are novels that cite Washington State Code. There are novels that cite Washington State Code. So you can say WSC whatever, and it's made up.
Ah.
And how is a poor little
Well,
robot
but if you
supposed to
said
know?
it's got to come out of the Washington State Code annotated, you mean that artificial intelligence will see it in the novel and think that it did come out of
Yes.
Washington State? I get it.
Yes.
So it's not all that intelligent.
No. It's not intelligent at all. It's a tool.
Yeah.
Next month, two things. First of all, I still want to do the presentation on spaces because I see a lot of people getting kind of trapped, and they say that their computer's not capable of doing something that probably is if they knew how to do certain things. That's one thing. The second one is that my church may be putting in new monitors this month. And if they're ready next month and I can find a weekend, we might have a Saturday meeting at my church where we can do things in person and possibly bring in equipment that we don't want anymore and foist it off on one another.
Yeah, sounds great idea.
If you have suggestions of what I could do instead, please send them off to me.
Or couldn't we do it in conjunction with, just have the meeting there, but also trade stuff?
Well, that's what I intend to do, but the in-person thing might be on a different topic than our regular monthly topic. It depends upon how ambitious I feel.
Okay.
Also, there's a festival in July, so who knows?
Well, are you going to download the beta version of 27 and fiddle around with it?
I cannot confirm or deny.
Okay.
I will tell you that if I do, it'll probably be on one of my iPads.
I'm pretty interested in that, how well that new passwords app will work or not.
That might be one of the last things I'd try because I'd rather not screw up my passwords.
Well, couldn't you use Peter Lyon's passwords?
That's a thought. But then I have to set the Peter Lyon up with one of my iPads. I'm kind of jealous of my iPads. But yeah, that's a thought. Anyway, write to me if you have questions or suggestions or whatnot.
Did you ever put up the sign-in sheet or?
No, because it's in an account that I can't reach. If I go into that other account, I kill the Zoom.
You put a link on the website?
I can do that, but I'm afraid I'll get sign-ins from, King Kong and whatnot.
Yeah,
Do you want to just take our names down?
I took a screenshot, but
Okay.
among other things, one person they signed in, I think might have been you, is listed as Zoom user, which is.
Oh, yes, I see that. Oh, okay. I guess you can educate me. How do I fix that?
Are you using a Mac?
iPad.
iPad. The answer is I don't know how to do that on an iPad.
Okay.
When you first sign into the meeting, it asks you what name you want to be known as.
Really?
Yep.
I'll watch for that next time. Okay. Okay. I had no idea that you only knew me as Zoom user. I'm Sherry, by the way. Steve knows me, so.
My daughter had a Apple time capsule which is a combination router, backup device, so on and so forth. And when she went off to college, because she wanted a firewall between her and everybody in her dorm, and we were coming up with names for it, and I suggested DEL space asterisk period asterisk, which she thought was fine, but it freaked out the Windows people because that's the command to delete everything on your hard drive.
Oh my gosh.
So they left her firewall alone, which is kind of what I wanted them to do. But you can do strange things with names if you're evil.
Or creative.
Well, that was a little evil, you know.
Well,
Anyway, good night, everyone.
good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks much.
Appreciate it.
Good night.